started. I'll call this meeting of the Bristol Budget Committee order at 6:01 on Tuesday, February 11th. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we're here primarily for the public meeting where we're going to go over the budget, the revenues, and hopefully more people are going to show up, and the proposed warrant article. There are, for members of the public, there are copies on the table if you don't already have that. For the most part, what we're going to do is go through the budget section by section and just mention the amount of money. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer, whether it's a number question or something else between the budget committee and the town department heads. We should have the ability to answer any reasonable question. So we'll start at the top. If I miss something, please speak up, but I think I've got this. So the first section is the executive department, and that's section 4130, and that's proposed to be $245,670. That is, I don't know if we want to do this, but that's a roughly $50,000 increase. It's significant, but it's primarily, a lot of that is due to some reorganization on how the town staffing is put together. There's more people in the department in 25 than there was in the beginning of 24. Do you guys have any questions or comments, anything? Go ahead.
Contract services is down to 0, or is that just a line that historically we've had? Am I reading that right?
Line 330.
Sorry, 330.
Yep.
No, it is 0. So we need to put that back. So the way we set up the budget, sorry, Mr. Sherry.
No, go ahead.
When we set up the budget, we set it up so the budget committee could see 2023 also.
Yeah.
We had to add lines back in that weren't in there. To do that, that's the reason it's in there. It'll go away next year.
It's been split out to departments.
The contract services in there, I think, was the acting town administrator at the time.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we don't have other contract services under that line. If we did, I'm not aware of them.
Yeah.
But we didn't, that was acting town administrator, we put it in that line, so.
I didn't know that, but I know it's something that we're not planning to spend against. We left it in there,
Right.
so we had the previous year columns, and it won't be in the 26 budget because we'll have gone enough years with zeros.
Yeah.
Yeah. We weren't getting our numbers to match when we were trying to match back to the budgets.
I know historically
Yeah.
we've had larger numbers in that, but it covered like various computer
I think
maintenance and stuff like that. I think,
you're talking about 312, I think, too, projects.
oh, probably. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
So computers is in general government now,
Okay.
but,
Yeah.
and projects line, we decided we're not planning any of it for 2025, but we didn't eliminate the line, so.
So part of that is, again, that we want to compare back to previous years, but the structure and the intent changes a little bit.
Yeah.
We've had at least one major accounting system change, so it's sometimes hard to compare apples to oranges, but we do the best we can.
Yeah.
That's not something that the budget committee cut. That was proposed from the department and the select board.
Gotcha.
Anything else in the executive session that anyone would like to have a question or make a comment about? Okay, so the next section is for, it's now called Elections, Registration, and Vital Statistics. It's basically our town clerk tax collector. So that's section 4140, and that is proposed to be $217,900. It's about 6%, 6.5% more than last year. Any questions? I'll give you a little time to take a look at it if you, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just assumed that the reductions are because it was an election year, general election last year.
For elections, it was less because in 2024, we had the presidential election, we had the town election, we had the state primary, and we had the general presidential election. In 25, we just have the town election. So you're correct, it's the number of elections. I could have let you do that, but I knew that one. Anything else in that section? So I think one of the things that's different, I can tell you, is that that is, I would say that is our primary public-facing office. That's the one that people come in here to interact with, to register their car, to buy a beach pass, to pay their property taxes, to do things like that. So I think the town has made a decision that we want to provide good service, and we want to keep that open, and so we budgeted, and Raymond was able to hire a part-time person, started recently, in order to keep that service level at the high place that it has been in the past.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Can I just clarify for anybody that's watching the public, that position was added last year,
Right.
not this year, so I don't want people.
Correct.
But we just hired it this year, so.
Thank you for that
Okay.
correction, yes. Okay, anything else in that? Go ahead.
Just a question on new equipment. It wasn't a lot spent last year, you still.
Yeah, if you could actually give me the line number, because that helps me to see where you are.
Is 810,
810, thank you.
and I assume that's just in case you need to purchase something like election related.
Yeah, so the big one, do you want to talk about this? Or you
It's
want
up to you. You were talking about the
It's the vote counting machine.
counting machine?
Right. So the machine that we use to count the ballots is old and not really supported by the manufacturer anymore. So,
And it was to be replaced this year, right?
and so what I
I didn't
believe.
hear
I mean,
you,
this
John.
past, so.
He's wondering why it didn't get.
So we budgeted for it. I think the state is still working to figure out what the recommendation is.
Okay.
And then they're gonna, most probably, they're gonna provide at least some grant money towards that. So the last time that we asked the question, what Ramus said was, the state still hasn't finalized what machine they want us to buy, and they haven't made the grant money available. So we didn't get it done in '24. We put it into the '25 budget again.
Yep.
So we'll get there eventually, but not yet. Okay? So that's just from a philosophical point of view. If we knew at the end of the year that what machine we wanted to buy, we would, I think, have made an effort to put in a purchase order and commit the money, and then we wouldn't have had to budget for it. But we're not ready to do that yet. So basically what'll happen is that the money at the end of '24 wasn't spent, it goes into the unassigned fund balance and becomes available for other things and offsetting taxes or something else. But it lapses, so since we want to do it again in '25, we have to budget again in '25. Yeah, almost all of our money is just on an annual basis. If you don't spend it at the end of the year, your authorization to spend goes away. Anything else in the town clerk section? Okay, we'll go to the third one, which is financial administration. That is section 4150. That is proposed in the amount of $204,585. So this is basically the finance officer position, right? And associated
And human
expenses.
resources.
And human resources, okay. So,
I'm sorry, just to be clear,
mm-hmm,
back to tax collector,
yep, okay. You
it
go
just says TC, but it's TC and TX?
Yes, it's, so they're all in one budget, so it's,
Yeah.
I think we abbreviated the town clerk. We changed that a while
Okay,
ago.
yeah, I just wanted to be sure.
Yes,
Right.
so it is both, yes, Sean.
Thank you.
So it's it used to be called town clerk / tax collector.
Yeah, it used to be in two
Well,
separate,
And we, oh, yeah.
Two
and
separate
they-
sections.
And they were, and they are combined,
thank
and actually, under the new, I don't know what it's called, but the new accounting system that officially, it's called elections, registrations, and vital statistics,
gotcha.
but it covers all of that, yes.
thanks.
We used to have tax and financial budget, so.
So, section 4150, financial administration, is our finance officer and our human resource, not officer, I don't know what the person, and then and if you look, there's actually line 130 was tax collector, which is 0, because it's up in the previous section now, it's not in finance anymore. So, I think this is fairly straightforward, other than the rest, FICA and insurance and things like that, there's money for the audit. What else is in
We're
here?
now fully staffed in that.
Yes. Yep.
We are.
Yeah, I think the reason it's in this budget, it used to be finance assistant.
Yeah.
And that's all changed with the restructure upstairs, so, but we are fully staffed now.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna move on again. If you see something and you wanna come back, speak up. So the fourth section is 4152, which is property, revaluation of property. And the proposed amount for that is $172,314. So. If you have a really hard question, Joanne is on Zoom, she can answer that, but, I mean, I think this is. Okay, not hearing any questions, I'll move on again. I guess one of the things I know I found it a little overwhelming to go to the school deliberative session and get a big packet with the budget in it and try to look at it at the same time that people were talking, it's overwhelming. So I will also say that when this meeting is over and you guys still have those documents, if you have questions, get in touch, I would think probably through Christina, and she can get a hold of me, or she can answer them directly, or we can get the department heads to
Great.
give us some information, because we are still looking to answer questions even if it comes up after this meeting.
Sure. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that.
We appreciate you coming out. The next section is the fifth one, which is legal expenses, which is 4153, and the proposed amount is $80,000. I will say that this is, I mean, it's one line and it's always a guess. We don't know who's gonna sue us or what's gonna come up, so we make our best guesstimate.
Do we know, like, the last couple of years?
And that number right now, I think, is right, that's in the budget before you, so it's 52 of 80, but we do have some open court cases right now.
Yeah.
So that's why we didn't change it.
Yeah.
I think the year before we finished 2023, I think it was closer to 65, right around there, but.
Thank you.
Okay. The next section is personal administration, which is 4155, and that's proposed amount of $732,019. I'll comment, you guys can ask some questions, but I will comment that this is a pretty significant change. It's about 30% less than last year. And that's primarily due to a decision that the town made on how we're handling some numbers. In the past, we budgeted anticipated, correct me if I say this wrong, Christina, but we budgeted anticipated salary increases for all of, or most of our employees, water and sewer is always separate, in this line. And I found it confusing, so what
The
we've done
total
now is,
possible,
now what we've done is we put that into each line for each staff member, and each department has it itself. It's no longer centralized in this department.
Right, and the only other thing, we didn't budget for library, so library, water, and sewer have their own, they were called merit increase lines. What we did in '24 is we did budget transfers and transferred all of the funds that were in this budget back to the lines, and that's where they're now budgeted, so.
And I don't know, again, I don't know if you would ask, but so one of the things that we do at the beginning of the budget season is we ask the select board, you know, kind of what are you thinking and what are your feelings for the priorities of the town? And one of the things they said to us, which made sense, although it was a little, is that in '24, we made a fairly significant investment in raising our employees' salaries. We felt that we were too far down on the comparative, and we were seeing that people were leaving service in Bristol to go take a job somewhere else making more money. We're not looking to be top payer, but we want to be closer to the middle. So we made that investment in '24, and they said, well, with inflation and what's going on, we're still in danger of falling behind. So as I understand it, I'm open to, is that in addition to all the people that do a satisfactory job that would get a step on the salary chart, which is 3%, the select board has chosen to give everyone basically an additional 1% cost of living. So instead of getting 3% raises in 2025, it's anticipated that everyone who's doing a good job will get a 4% raise.
4 point something.
Thank you. You probably know more about it than I do.
So what they're doing is adjusting the wage scale by 1%, so.
Yeah.
Right, so you stay on the same level, but the chart will be updated.
But there is some merit-based judgment in that? or not? It kind of sounded like that's what they
The
were saying.
board has changed that slightly. It would be a performance improvement plan if you're below a certain score on your evaluation, but as long as you're above that, then you get your step, and then the wage scale is
So
adjusted.
still based on the evaluation,
But
it's
the,
just not a slider.
but so the, I think I gotta be careful because I'm not an HR person. But my understanding is that 3 or 4 years ago, you would get a performance evaluation, and depending upon whether you got, you know, outstanding or good or fair or poor, you would get a different raise. Now it's basically yes or no. You're doing a good job, you get a raise. No, you're not doing a good enough job, you need to improve your performance, you don't. But it's not different. Did I get that? Did I not say it
You
right?
are right, but I just want to add, if you would go into permanent performance improvement plan, but it doesn't mean you won't get that. If you meet your expectations, then you would get the movement on
At the
at the
at
later
the time
date.
that you meet it.
Yeah.
All right. So,
And Mr. Chair, one of your members is going to join on Zoom in a few minutes just to
oh,
give you a
it's the
heads.
only one not here, so I know who you're talking about.
Yes.
All right, so that was personal administration. The next section is planning board, which is $4191, and that is a proposed amount of $9,300. So this is basically, I think of it as operating expenses for running the planning board. We don't pay the planning board people a salary, but they have costs involved in doing the work they do.
And most of that comes back in fees. A
A
good chunk of that.
Yes, yeah, a good chunk of that between application fees.
Yep.
Okay, so not hearing any questions about planning, which is 4191, we'll go on to zoning, which is 4192. And zoning is a proposed amount of $2,450. So again, this is their expenses, the cost for them to do the things that we've asked them to do. That's fairly straightforward, so now we'll move on to the next section, which is 4193, which is mapping or tax map. That's $8,750. That is basically a license fee that we pay for the mapping program that we use. Okay? The next section is general government buildings, which is 4194, and that is $439,227, which is a lot of things in here. It's not a significant increase. It's pretty close to it's less than a 1% increase from the current, or from last year's 24 budget. But you've got computer support, you've got telephones, you've got heating and porta toilets and general stuff that we do to keep the town running. If I took the time and went through line by line, you could go all of this, but I'm gonna stop talking and see if you guys have any questions. Go ahead.
Question on why electricity is lower in this budget than was budgeted last year.
Eversource rates have dropped.
So,
Sorry.
go ahead.
We're contracted, before Eversource rates drops, we contracted with Constellation, so we have a locked-in rate,
Okay.
for a year, and the rates were definitely coming down, so we felt we could cut it. So,
They may be going up again.
well, we're locked in
But
on
as long as
one
we're locked
side
in,
with
yeah.
Constellation luckily, but
Why did the selectmen zero out the town clock stipend?
that was, not, it was an accident,
Okay.
but we're still gonna pay that.
Great.
There was, when we transferred over, that was one of the lines
Well,
that was missing.
Actually,
But-
Sean, if you look, line 490, town clerk.
Oh, I see
I'm
that
sorry.
the budget committee has.
We added the 750
Yep.
back in.
Yep.
Because even though the select board recommended 0, we thought that was, they didn't do it on purpose.
Right.
It was an oversight in the budget that was presented to them, and we decided to correct it and put the money back.
Yeah,
We don't usually do a lot of adding, so that was unusual, but we did. All right, any other questions on general government?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what is the newfound area access?
Uh,
Sorry, line 815?
that's our media manager.
So that's basically our,
Recordings,
yeah.
all the work he does on the website,
Yeah.
so. That is offset by, cable franchise, not completely though, but the board made a decision to give him the increases even if we weren't giving the cable franchise, cause he's taken on a ton of work for us, so. And we are renewing the cable franchise this year, so we're negotiating.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, so the next section is cemeteries, which is 4195, and that is the proposed amount of $800.
Anybody interested in becoming a cemetery trustee?
Yes, the three-member board currently has 2 members, and so they're looking for a volunteer to be appointed to the 3rd position.
We do have one on the ballot and that person's running, but we have an open position, somebody resigned, so you're welcome to submit your name.
Okay, the next section is insurance, property and liability insurance, section 4196. That's the proposed amount of $77,223. Not a lot of negotiation by the budget committee about this. We're told how much it is and we don't change it. So, if you have a question, we can try to answer, but I'm gonna move on. So, the next section, in the last section in the general government section, is advertising and regional associations, which is 4197. That's a proposed amount of $7,531. This is basically membership fees to the Lakes Region Planning Commission and the New Hampshire Municipal Association. So, to organizations that the town is members of, and they charge a membership fee, and that's where it is in the budget. So it's not official, I mean, but the budget has some subsections. The ones we've just gone through are considered general governance, and that what we've done so far totals up to $2,197,769. And now the next couple of sections are gonna be in public safety. So the first one is the actual public safety building, which is section 4200. This is a new department, a new section in the budget. In the past, the cost for the police department building was in the police department, and the cost for the fire station was in the fire department building. But now that it's a shared building for both of them, rather than trying to figure out how to split it up between those two, we created a new section to house those costs. And at this point, with less than a year's time in there, some of these numbers are a little less confident than we are usually, but this was our best understanding using the expertise that we had available to discuss what was happening here.
And it shows a huge increase because you only had a portion.
Well, it shows a huge increase because, yeah, we basically didn't
Right.
have it in it last,
Right.
or we, at most, we would have had half a year.
Right. And only a couple months of heating.
Correct. So if you have any questions, I mean, general questions, I think so far, one of the things we've talked about, when we talked about this with the folks in charge of this, is they've said so far the building has looked to be pretty efficient, that it looks like it's gonna take, it's a bigger building, but certainly per square foot, the costs are gonna be lower. Even not on square foot, the total cost is probably gonna be, am I talking out of my backside?
No, they're significantly lower, I think, even than we thought they would be. And that's why they're, just real quick, that's why there's a lot of kind of big adjustments and maybe still some big numbers, certainly getting through the course of a year, and in particular heating season, will be huge. Farmington sent me all the information on their building for years of kilowatt hours and gallons of propane, so we could apply it to our actual rates. Those were where those numbers panned out, so I think propane and heating will be a little bit closer. But just overall, the electrical subcontractor and the contractor really worked to kind of outdo themselves on the electrical fixtures. And I'm very confident we're gonna be under that number, but the discussion at the budget committee level and the board level was, we'll cut it, but maybe err on the side of caution before, until next year.
Well, that's exactly right. We wanted to take the savings that we thought we could, but we didn't want to take so much that we ended up with not enough to pay all the bills. So in the first year, we were probably a little conservative, but it's where it makes sense to be.
Just out of curiosity, how does it compare to the old fire station, the heating costs?
Oh, it's night and day. I mean, so even if we hit that number at $12,000, right, which I don't really think we do, I think we'll be close, so call it 10 maybe. I think we were at 19 last year, or no, 14 and change. So it's less heating, maybe not as big,
Much
right?
bigger building.
33%,
Yeah.
but it's 20,000 square feet versus 6,600 square feet. And so then you throw in the other, portion of what the PD used to pay to heat that 60s, 80s type building. And it's a huge, even these numbers that are probably a little bit high conservatively are beating that roughly 50% cost savings that we projected to see.
Okay, so that's the public safety building. The next line is the police department, which is section 4210. That's a proposed amount of $1,494,152. I'll try to give you a second, because this is a fairly big section. It's, what, 3.5 pages, almost 4 pages, so there's a lot of things in there. But I don't think that there's any proposed changes in the services being provided or the goals of what we get from them, so it's,
Without getting into individual specifics, I'm assuming there was some classification changes or something when you look at a
yes,
21% increase.
that's what Chief told us, that people at one point,
Or
the
look
most-
at another certification
right,
and,
and the person they most recently hired had more experience than they were originally thinking they could get, so came in higher on the wage
Yeah.
scale and was originally budgeted for, and
thank you.
The two patrol ones are officers that had a couple of years on, were replaced with officers with, one's got 20-plus years and the other one's got like 17 or 18 years.
And the flip side of that, I know is, I don't think it was this year, it was last year, but when, I mean, before you got your current job, we had a chief and 2 lieutenants, and now we have a chief and 1 lieutenant.
So, but this is bringing back 2 lieutenants,
Okay.
though. This budget, which I believe it went over with the select board, is to bring, we essentially took the second lieutenant, and gave a sergeant all the tasks, and he went above and beyond, has done even more things, but we're not paying him for that, so I felt we should bring that back. I thought we could get rid of it, but then we just asked somebody else to do all the same work.
Yeah.
So.
Answer your question?
Yep.
Question on overtime.
Yep.
You're fully staffed at this point, or,
We're fully staffed, yeah. Last year we were not, so the difference is
so the
covering.
overtime should be less though, because you've got full
We
staff.
spent 103,000 last year.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, so-
We also had an injury, we had an injury that was, insurance related too, so we weren't paying that salary for a while too.
Right, but, so we budgeted 70, but we spent 103 in '24, and for '25, it's been proposed, and we agreed to put 80,000 in there. Did somebody in Zoom want to make a comment? No, okay. Any other,
Should be working as soon as it's working. We want this here.
I think that's for Sue.
You gotta mute Susan.
Sue, I think we can hear you, so if you could mute your,
Mary, can you mute them? Yep.
Better than the last time.
Not as bad as our last time.
Yeah.
so I guess the one other thing I wanted to, like if you look at line 891, one of the things we've talked about is, so that's for basically radars for some patrol cars and some more signs. And we talked about the fact that we anticipate that's gonna be covered by a grant. So we're a little, from a budget committee point of view, we were like, is there a way we can't not show this because it inflates the number, but it doesn't cost the town anything because it's not gonna be covered by a grant? And basically what the state told us was, if you want the grant, it has to be in your budget,
Yeah.
and it's gross appropriation. So we got 10,000, I mean, it's not a huge amount of money, but we got $10,000 in the budget, but we know we're gonna get offsetting revenues, so it happens in a couple of places here in the budget. All right, any other police department questions? All right, not hearing any, we'll now move on to the fire department. That's section 4220, and that's a proposed amount of $1,574,957. So you can see again, this is a couple of pages, there's a lot in there. The first bunch of lines are for salaries for employees, and then there's a bunch of sections in there with the support for that, insurance and FICA and things like that. I'm trying to think what else in here that needs to be called out, if anything. If you guys have a question, feel free to speak up. So one of the things that I will mention, if you just go down further to like lines 660 through 660, or 370, 670, in the past, so again, because we want to be able to compare last year's numbers, anything that was in the budget last year or the year before still has a line in this budget, even if we're going to spend zero. So we've done this in the fire department, we've done this in a couple of other departments, where we used to have a line basically for every vehicle or every major piece of equipment for the maintenance of it. And what we've done is, we're moving all of that into line 660, which is just maintenance for all of the equipment and vehicles in that department. I think it gives us a little bit more, I like it because then you can use some number things, instead of saying I gotta take, everything could potentially break, everything needs money, but on average, you're expecting a couple of things to break and most things not to. So I think that one of the things we talked about is that here and in the other departments, even though all the money is now in one line in 660, the department head still, every piece of equipment, every vehicle has its own tag. They're still tracking what's being spent against it, so we can still do the analysis about, we start to, something look like it's now needs so much repair that it maybe would be better to replace it. Where are we spending it? How is the equipment holding up? We do still have that information, even though from a budgeting point, all that money is in the one line 660.
Okay.
I think I've noticed that we did that in police too, but I didn't notice it when I was talking about police.
Oh, police did it last year.
Yeah. And when we get to highway, they're gonna do it also this year. And was there anything that I'm not rambling on about that you wanted to make sure people knew about?
Yeah, your next terminal set.
Thank you. All right. Anything else on fire department? So the next section is forestry, which is 4230, and that's a recommended amount of 0. So one of the things we've been doing over the past couple of years is basically, I'm gonna be careful because I'm not an expert on this, but the forestry is basically done by the fire department. And in the past, it was budgeted separately, and basically what we've done over the past few years is move that money into the fire department so that it's not shown separately as forestry. Whatever services are needed, the town is still providing. The people in the fire department who were doing them before are still doing them. They still have the money and the resources they need to get the job done, but it's just being handled in the budget a little differently. Is that a okay statement? Okay.
Is there generally state compensation on that?
There is for larger incidents, it doesn't cover a lot of
Yeah.
everything, and, we don't.
Haven't had anything.
You said it, not
You'll have to deal with it too.
we call him Sean, from Chainsaw.
I can do that.
Okay, the next section is emergency management, which is 4290, and that's a recommended amount of $1,002. So, it's $1,000 for training and $1 in each of 2 lines, just to give a non-zero number in case something comes up that the select board and the chief have the option. It's a lot easier to change 1 to something, sometimes it's gonna be harder to change 0, so where it makes sense, we'll put 1 in just to make things easier for the town.
Just a question of why that wasn't moved into the fire department as well, because that's all intertwined.
Yeah, I think, just given the way that, so one of the big questions when we moved away from the forestry budget was, do we need a forestry budget when it comes to grants or funding opportunities like that? And the basic answer we got from the state was no. I don't know that we're in the same boat with emergency management, but when you're looking at those direct federal funds, to me, I would still rather have this be its own separate line, so that there's just an easier way to account for, whatever grant that we may get, over the course of the year.
Okay. Anything else on emergency management? All right, so police and fire and all those other things we just did are all public safety, and for the subtotal for that section, it's $3,107,311. The next base group of departments we're gonna talk about are grouped as public works. And the first one of those is the highway department, which is section 4311. So this is basically the operations budget for the highway department, and this is proposed amount of $748,984. So, you can see again that this is a couple of pages long. It starts off with all of the employees in the department and their salaries and their associated costs, like in Medicare and retirement and insurance, uniforms, things like that. And then there's lines down below for operating things, electricity and radios and, again, equipment, vehicle maintenance has been moved all together into line 660 and 661 through 670, let's see, 679 maybe? No, 678 are still in the budget because they were there last year, but they're zero for all emergencies. Victor, anything that you want to bring people's attention other than me rambling on?
Nope, I thought we kept it pretty tight, for the first time out for myself.
Yeah. So,
Question on line 142 on the
yep.
on-call compensation.
142 on-call compensation. So we asked about that also. Basically what Victor told us, I forgot the numbers, but he said there's a number of departments that have people that are on call, and that the rate in all the other departments was one thing and the rate in the highway department was different, lower, and that he wanted to bring it up so that the folks in his department got the same pay as the folks in the other
So
departments.
it's not anticipating extra usage of people, just compensating them
Yes,
at better rate.
and we only run an on-call for about 16 weeks anyway.
I originally thought that was summer. He said, no, that has to do with winter plowing.
Yes.
It looks like you must be getting a handle on all the dead ash trees, as that number has gone down over the last couple of years.
Yeah, but I mean, we've identified,
Yeah.
and we'll be identifying again this year. But yes, we're still working on that issue.
But you're talking 390, the tree removal. right?
Yeah, sorry.
Yep, that's okay. Maybe I'm being optimistic, but since we only have the two of you here, I'm hoping somebody is, watching this stream, that we have people in the audience who are watching it electronically. So if I call out the line number, it makes it a little easier for them to follow along. Okay, anything else in the highway operations department? Not hearing anything, we'll go on to the highway projects department, which is 4312, and that's a proposed amount of $335,001. So the majority of this is resurfacing, basically road maintenance. There's some money in here for guardrails, there's some money in here for some drainage. But the great majority of it is for road surface. Any question?
What are the identified guardrail projects?
The identified guardrail is for a section on Crescent Street and then a long section on a rock wall on Green Street.
Yeah.
Both those two particular sections, we don't have the capability of doing it, and I've got quotes out from CWS.
Thank you.
Okay,
I don't know if you remember, but I do. When families in the evening would gather around celebrating the celebration.
thank you.
Okay.
Next section is street lighting and bridges, which is section 43-9, oops. Yeah, so, wait. So we just did highway project, which was $335,001, and now, okay. Now we're doing $35,001, which is street lighting and bridges, 4319. So, $35,000 for street lighting and $1 for bridges as a placeholder.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
can you speak up
Sure.
and just let her know that we keep hearing the background noise?
Okay. And that's Sue? Sue, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, something's coming through, we think it's on you, where there's like some male voice talking in the background that's, we have to,
Okay, hold on 1 second. Can you shut the door?
thank you.
Okay, how's that?
That's much better, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, so, any questions? Is this the last year on this? So we upgraded all of them and we're paying the,
That's actually, the street lighting's handled out of you, Christina.
Yeah.
I don't manage that.
gotcha, okay.
The last year on the loan, and then I just need to determine what kind of cost we would incur for replacing the lights in the future. So we should be able to adjust this, I think, down some,
Okay.
so.
I do know we replaced 3 or 4 heads, and we're down to 1 head left
Right.
due to accidents and that, and that's a discussion that we need to have about the replacement heads.
Okay,
Because Eversource replaces them for us when there's a strike, but because we don't do it, they do.
right, and then they send us a bill out.
Yeah, the overflow supply of parts we have, and we're getting low on heads because of that.
So we do one more loan payment, and then we just have to determine what it's gonna cost us to replace when we start running out of stocked equipment, so.
Okay. I hadn't thought of it as a loan. I thought the way it had been described to me was we contracted with a company who replaced, I'm not sure I get the details right. Basically, they replaced the fixtures with old incandescent bulbs with new, much more efficient bulbs, and we agreed to pay the old cost for 3 years, where they pocketed the savings to pay for the project, and I was asking.
If I remember correctly, they did everything at the same time, so basically you're paying, considered a loan because you're
Well, we
Makes
doing
sense.
all the work, but we're spreading the payment
Right.
over.
So this is level funded, and it's
Right.
just that next year we'll have an opportunity maybe to think about, maybe we could have some savings.
When we did the project, there is a lease payment. There was a
Gotcha.
3-year lease payment, it's roughly $20,000, but what they asked us to do is keep the 35 in the budget until we knew what kind of repair costs we might have over the years.
Okay,
So we're paying the last payment this year, and we should be able to drop that down, we just have to confirm what it's gonna cost
I
us
guess,
to
I guess,
stop
the, I
that.
guess the point is, and it's not really something that was important for tonight, is that it is level funded, but this is the last year that it pretty much needed to be level funded.
Correct.
So next year, we can spend some more time on this line, and we might find a way to reduce it. But at this point, we're in the middle of a contract, or we're towards the end, but we're still in a contract where we need to keep this level funded. Did I get that one? Okay.
Yep.
All right, good. No questions on streetlights. We'll move on to solid waste, which is section 4324, and that's a proposed amount of $422,454. So this is the cost for trash and recycling at the transfer station. So, and this is just the expense side. There is some money from revenue from recycling, but that'll be in the revenue discussion. So, any questions about the transfer station? Okay, the last section in Public Works is fire betterment, which is section 4339, and the proposed amount is $10,000. This is level funded. This is, because we tend to forget, this is the way, this is basically the fire hydrants. Some of it is paid, am I getting this right? This is fire hydrants, some of it gets paid out of the water department, and some of it gets paid out of general municipal. This is the share that's getting paid by general municipal.
It's a way for the general fund to reimburse some of the expenses to the water department for the
Right.
maintenance of the hydrants.
Okay? Any questions?
I would just note that that's been $20,000 total for at least 15, if not 20, if not 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before my time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
That was
I'm-
4 or 5 years ago.
I think the philosophy is that originally somebody estimated it at $20,000, and we said we'd split it 50-50, so
Yeah.
10-1. I kind of don't want to look any harder, because it's a bigger number, then we got to increase this. So I'm happy, if we keep getting proposed 10, I'm happy to leave it.
Town has been successful at level funding now for 25 years.
All right, and the last section is public services, so there's a bunch here. So the first one is land use, so on all of those public works, highway, operations, projects, streets, solid waste, that's a total of $1,551,440. And the fourth and last section, general big section, is called public services, and the first line in that is land use health office, which is section 4411, and that is a proposed amount of $158,437. So, you can see that, again, this, like a lot of the departments, the first couple of lines are employees and their salary, and then it gets down into the associated stuff with that, retirement and insurance, and then there's a little bit of operating costs, water testing and supplies and postage. Not hearing any questions, I'll move on to the next section, which is animal control. That's section 4414, and that is proposed amount of $200. This is actually less, it was proposed to be less, and we just left it where it was. I think we changed this one.
As long as the
No,
PD
it's not like
keeps
it.
watching these animals for us, so we're
Yeah.
good.
It's probably gonna go up though for next year. It's something that we've needed to do
Well-
something different about for a while. We explored some different contracts, but their numbers were just way too much money, but something other than driving to Enfield with dogs really needs to change, because we've already brought quite a few this year. But that's what keeps the dollar number low, is using Enfield.
Okay.
So we also pay for stray cats, so we get billed for them as well. We just found out.
So the spending was $500, but you're only putting in 200.
Yeah, I don't remember the details of this. I don't remember that we changed it. I think the select board recommended amount, if you, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right, it's a,
The select board recommended amount was 200, and we, honestly, I'm not sure I understand, but it's not a big number, and I didn't want to really add things in, so If
It
the,
might have been from a dog that needed some medical stuff, why I went.
There are 2 dogs and a cat, in that, I think, in that building. But I think the board just felt, we don't know what we're gonna have, so just level fund it, so that's why they put it at the 200, because we just don't know what we're gonna get. But we do have to look into better options in the future, so.
okay, so the next section is health agencies and hospitals, which is section 4415, and that's the recommended amount of 33,400. So this is basically community support for the Lakes Region Visiting Nurse Association, which is the successor to NANA, and to the Penny Baker Hospice and Home Health. Those are the 2 agencies that we know that are providing
So why are
nursing
there
services.
such huge jumps?
Because they would decrease the previous year.
So, when I started 4.5 years ago, we gave $33,400 to NANA.
Right.
So during COVID, you couldn't assemble, so we said, we made a big cut. We cut them down in half. And we said, well, you're still going to people's houses and providing them service, but you're not doing any community services. We're not getting like seniors get together where you're running a blood pressure clinic or a toenail foot health clinic. You can't run a flu shot clinic because you can't assemble people in your building to give them shots. So we said we thought we were getting less service and we were looking for places to cut, and we cut them. And then at some point, Penny Baker came to us and they said, well, we're providing services and so we would like to be supported too. So we supported them. And they asked, Lakes Region has consistently asked to go back to 33,400, and we have always said no. And we had quite a long discussion this year and some interesting disagreements. And in the end, what was proposed, and the majority of the board agreed, was we would take the whole department back up to 33,400, which is what we had spent 4 or 5 years ago, and we would divide it between the 2. One of the things that was interesting is that basically the select board had said, we don't want to spend really a lot of time on this. So in our budget, what we're going to do is we're going to level fund them, because we don't work with them, we don't talk to them, and we don't want to take the time to do that. I don't mean to criticize them, they were just admitting they have other things that are more important. So they said, we're just going to level fund them, and then you guys on the budget committee have them come in and make a presentation and talk to you. You're more informed of what's going on, so you guys make a decision of what the correct level should be. And we had, the majority of the committee agreed, and we had one person in particular who strongly advocated for bringing the support level up.
And do you have a number of calls, you know?
I did not bring that with me. We do have information. We asked them. One of the things that we've done now for, I think, 2 years. So 3 years ago, we basically said, make a request and what you want and send, give us what information. And then starting 2 years ago, we decided, no, we want more information. So we changed the letter to say, not just how much do you want, but what are you providing? How much are you providing? What percentage of what you're doing is in Bristol? How many Bristol cases or people are you helping? So we have all that information, but I did not think to bring all of that with me to this meeting, so I can't. But yes, we do know.
Well, I'm assuming that they're providing a lot more services on an annual basis. So they're,
I think a really interesting point that the CEO of Lakes Region VNA mentioned too is it's not, so historically home health and VNA services have really been kind of perceived as something happens and then you receive them, right? And she's actually been really advocating for more preventative care for particularly senior citizens in the communities that they serve. And so part of their philosophy moving forward is actually to really invest heavily on preventative care options to try to prevent people from needing to go to the hospital and needing VNA care after the fact. So That was part of their presentation, along with the statistics of kind of growth of services
Mhm.
over time. I'll just tell you from my perspective, there's not enough ENA services, and every hospital in New Hampshire will tell you that same thing. So,
And the agents, mid-state and the hospitals are getting rid of patients because they're looking to make money rather than services. That's my opinion. I think the home health agencies are
I'll cover up
playing
my
a bigger
chest.
part.
So one of the things that both of the organizations have changed their executive director in the past 3 years. Lakes Regions have done it twice. Debbie Baker, I believe, has done it once. The new director at Lakes Region does seem to be more proactive. I know they're working with the senior services that are provided out of the BUCC. They send a nurse monthly to do a blood pressure check. They're working with the director there to talk about what additional services do the seniors in Bristol who go to that want to receive, and could they potentially provide. So I think that there is, as Joe said, there's also a desire to not just be, hey, someone is sick and then we've got an order to go provide services. They're trying to think about how can we improve the overall health of the community and all the members in it. So we'll see. It's a journey, and no, we're not at the end of it yet, but they are getting back. They're not where they were during the COVID, where we were really concerned that they'd stopped doing a lot of things. You want to say anything?
All I can say is, we were paying a certain amount of money 5 years ago. Inflation, we were happy with those services, but inflation has considerably affected what services there were. And the services have improved since we made complaints. And the 2 cases that I referenced are much happier now. They're getting the service they need. And that's why I supported it.
Does that give you the information you wanted? Did that answer you? Okay, good. Okay, so the next section is welfare administration, which is section 4441. And that is a proposed amount of $203. So that is a huge decrease, and that's because how we're providing this has changed. Instead of having a person who was dedicated specifically for that we had to budget for them, now it's being done by a person in a department who is elsewhere in the budget. Yeah, go ahead.
The person was dedicated in this budget, but the person was also shared with another department.
Right, they were not
So-
full-time doing this. Yeah.
We just switched the duty, the person now is going full-time, which is at the fire department, and then we switched the duties into the executive office, and combined them with another job, so.
So if you have some questions, but I mean, when you look at the, last year it was budgeted at $20,200. Am I in the right section? No, I'm sorry. Last year was budgeted at $11,117. I don't know what I'm doing here.
13.8.
I'm on the wrong one.
13.8.
Thank you, sorry. Yeah, so it was $13,800 and now it's $203. So I mean, that's obviously something is happening there, and that's what happened is we're still providing those services, it's just in a different part of the budget now. It's in the executive section of the budget. Okay? So, if you have a question, let me know, but I think that was the answer that you needed. And now we got welfare services, which is section 4445. That's in a recommended amount of $28,900. So, if you look at this, you'll see that the 24 budget was $18,900 and the recommended amount is $28,900. The year before it was $28,900. So for 24 we chopped money out of it. I don't know, I didn't get a year-end report, but towards the end of the year we were surviving that. But the message we got was that the request for services was going up, that we really should go back to where it was in '23, and the committee, the budget committee agreed with that. So it looks like it's an increase, but it's just going back to where it was in '23 is what I'm trying to point out to everybody. Any other questions? Okay, next section is Parks and Recreation, which is section 4520, and that's a recommended amount of $125,778. And this is just the one line. This is to pay for the services that we received from the PTCC. Anything? All right, so the next section is beaches, and that's section 4521, and that's the recommended amount of $48,574. So this is up a fair amount, from almost 40,000 to 48,000. I'm trying to remember exactly why.
Swim lines, it's one of them.
Swim lines.
The lines.
Yeah, it's under maintenance.
Oh, right, that was what it was, line 430.
And we broke out contract services for the person who has to do the maintenance of the swim lines.
Right. So line 301 and line 430. Line 301 is basically a new line, and line 430, basically what they told us was I call them swim lines, I call them the buoys that separate the swimming area from the boating area at both of the beaches, need to be replaced. And we asked if we could, maybe stagger that and do one this year and one next year, and what we were told was that the last year's were not, I think we were told they weren't stored properly and they were damaged, and for safety reasons, we needed new ones, and so it's in the budget.
I think they're more patched than
Uh-huh.
original. They were pretty rough 4 years ago.
I think it makes sense. I think we identify as a lake community, our beach services are an important part of our, personally didn't really like spending the extra money, but I think that sometimes you've gotta, even if you don't like it, sometimes you gotta do things. We definitely wanna keep all our swimmers safe and away from the boats. Or keep the boats away from our swimmers, is, I guess, more like it. All right, any other questions? Any questions on beaches? Not hearing that, we'll go to the next section, which is Kelly Park, which is 4522. That's a recommended amount of $39,926.
Projects line.
Yeah, thank you. So line 820, which is projects, which was there was no money in the '24 budget, is $20,000 in the '25 budget. And basically it's, I think that they had requested money in '24, and that's one of the places that we, as a budget committee, made some cuts, because we were looking to get the number down. So it's not that it didn't exist in the past, it has existed in years before '24. But in '24, the budget committee made the decision to zero it out. And we're saying now, the needs are still there, and now we do need to fund it in order to get those done. I think they're talking about doing some repair on the tennis court fence, and there's some tree work done, and maybe some work on at least one of the ball fields. We didn't get into the detail, we're not trying to manage the detail of exactly what work is going on in there, or not. Okay, so if no questions on Kelly Park, the next section?
Actually, I do.
Okay, go ahead, yeah, please.
The total seems to be up by 90, sorry.
Right, we went from a budget in
Oh,
2024 of 20,700 to a budget in '25 of 39,900. So we went up about $19,000. But if you look at lines 820, you can see basically where that
I was
comes
thinking it
from.
was 29 additional.
Oh, okay.
I can't add.
It's okay. All right, next section is library, so that's section 4550, and that's a recommended amount of $278,243. So, this is all the things that the library does. I think our library director is on the Zoom if we have any specific questions, but you can see that we've got salaries and people working there and all the associated costs with that. And then the operating costs of running the library, the building, the electricity, the heating, the security, the computer support, office supplies, custodial supplies. I don't think there's anything too strange in there, but if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. Okay, again, we'll go back to it if you see something, but I'll move on to patriotic purposes. That's section 4583, and that's the amount of $29,900. So it's not quite level funded, but it's pretty darn close. So this is basically the fireworks are handled in a separate warrant article, but this is the other things. This is the community events, the coordinator for the summer concert series and things like that, the downtown decorating committee, putting up the flags and other things on the poles to decorate the downtown area.
We added a little bit of money under the patriotic purposes because we have to replace some of the bunting and flags this year, so.
Okay. Okay, so the next section is the Conservation Commission, which is section 4611. That's in the recommended amount of $2,400. There's no salaries. This is volunteers working on this commission, but they have some costs, operating costs to basically do the work that they do. Any questions? The next section is Historic District Commission, that's section 4612, that is a recommended amount of $650. Basically, they increased the advertising line, the first line, 550. That's the only line that's different than level funding. The next section is Economic Development Committee, that's that's Department 4651, that's a recommended amount of $1,300. So the project line went down. I think the committee is a little less active now that Bill Dowey's not in town anymore, but we'll see what happens in the future.
We were able to encumber some of the funds from 2024 to cover the not contracts, but cover engineering or surveying that's needed for the project as well, so.
That's the PATH subcommittee? Okay. So this is what was asked for. I don't believe we made any changes in this section. And then the last section is outside agencies, which is section 4652, and that's a recommended amount of $38,350. So for the most part, I believe, these are all of the other community organizations that do provide services to Bristol and its residents and ask us for support. The one that, I believe the only one that changed was line 573, which is Voices Against Violence. So they had $3,500 last year, and they asked for $7,000. And what I remember is we asked them, why? And basically the answer we got was that they have a new executive director, and she tried to figure out where the request was justified by the previous director, and really couldn't find anything. So she started from scratch and said, these are all the services we're providing, and here's all the costs we're incurring, and gee, we didn't ask for enough last year, I'm gonna ask for $7,000. And it wasn't unanimous, but the majority of the committee agreed that that was justified. We've heard, both from the questions we've asked and from a couple of other places, that they do provide valuable services and are an asset to the community. I guess the other thing that changed, and it's not something that we did, is line 578. The Bridge House Shelter had asked for money in '24, and we had budgeted that. They basically, I don't know what's going on with them, but they said we're not asking for money in '25. So we didn't cut them. They basically said they were gonna take a year off. And then again, one of our members was concerned that they might come back during the year and ask for some money, so we changed it from 0 to 1, just to make it easier for the select board if they decide they want to put money into that line. Am I missing anything, folks? I think that's mostly what's going on here. Okay, so again, now, those sections, the beaches and the recreation and the library and the Conservation Commission, all grouped together to be into a bigger group, subgroup called Public Services, and they total up to be $786,261. If you take all four of those and you add them together, you get what is our general fund obligations, which is $7,642,781. So that's what we're proposing is for general operations of the town.
An increase of 5%.
An increase, yes, 5.8%. And then the next lines have to do with debt service, so there's 3 lines here. The first one is basically the principal payments on our long-term debt, which is section 4711. That's $353,270. We can go through this and I can try to answer questions, but honestly, we don't spend a lot of time on this because this represents payments on bonds. We've taken out the loan, we're obligated to make the payments. There's not really an opportunity to go back and renegotiate and cut money in these sections. So the next section is now the interest payments on the long-term debts. That's section 4721, and that's a recommended amount of $190,341. Again, now instead of the principal payment on bonds and long-term debt, this is the interest payments. I think it has to be on 2 different lines for state reasons. It's the way it's always been handled. Again, this is what we were told is going to be needed to make the payments that are required to be made.
And interesting, even with the addition of the building, they're both down somewhat.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
I wrote the one thing that's down is, if you look at the debt, we took the debt, the Central Street Force Main bond payment out because we won't be making a payment this year. So that's out, and that will have to go back in next year when we make our first payment on the bonds. And then the interest for the Central Street is in there on the project though, because we anticipate we'll be paying some of that this year, so.
So just to make sure that was clear. So if you go back to the principal payments, section 4711, and you look at line 997, you'll see we budgeted 0. And that's because the project is going forward, but we won't make a principal payment until the project is completed. The project won't be completed in time that we need to make a principal payment in 2025. But if you go to the next section, 4721, and you go to that same 997 line, there is $20,000 in there because there will be an interest payment on, I believe it's a bridge loan financing, but it's basically there will be an interest payment on a loan in order to fund that project.
Yes, we have a bond anticipation note, similar to a tax anticipation note that we draw down, and then we will get USDA funding, but not until the project is done. So that's why we won't have a bond, an actual bond payment, we're just gonna pay on the bond anticipation note.
And then the third line, the third section in this grouping is TAN, which is tax anticipation note, which is 4723, and that's a recommended amount of $18,000. So this one was kind of interesting. We had budgeted $1,500 last year. I don't think it had changed in a bunch of years, so that's a number we probably got 3 years ago from Bob. Maybe that was back when banks were paying squat and charging squat. Because this year when we actually needed the tax, because the whole problem with the school and we couldn't get the tax bills out and we needed to borrow money to keep our cash flow going, our finance officer came to me and said, who budgeted this? This isn't enough to pay interest on. So she said, it should be 18,000. And I believe, I know that the staff will work to try to not do this because we don't want to do it if we don't have to. But next year will be every 5 years we do a reval, and we will do a reval at the end of '25. So there is a chance the tax bills could be delayed a little bit. So we definitely wanted money in the budget for a TAN in case it's needed at the end of '25. Did I?
We made our first TAN payment, I can't tell you what it was, interest payment. We only pay interest on the TAN, we pay them back obviously, but we only pay interest in the budget on the TAN. But we do anticipate we may have to get a TAN towards the end of the year again with the reval. So.
And we didn't have an expense until January on that.
Yes, not until January on that, yep. We took it in December.
Right.
But we didn't have our first interest payment due until January.
So if you take this section, these 3 lines, the principal payments, the interest payments, and TAN potential expenses, and add them together, that's $561,611. Then if you add that to the general fund obligations, so you get a line that's general fund obligations and debt service, that's $8,204,392. So this is the part, I get a little, so this is the part of the budget that is going to be funded by general revenues. So general grants, general revenue, general state aid, and property taxes. So even though we still have to cover water and sewer, and that's part of the warrant article that the town has to approve, that's funded through grants specific to water and sewer and water and sewer fees. So this is the line, to this point, potentially affects your property taxes. We're gonna do the other lines, but they don't really affect, shouldn't really affect.
Do you have a percent on, because it's not on here. Do you have a percent on
5.15% increase over the '24 budget.
on total government?
Total government and debt service.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. I think you and I think the same
Is
way.
it-
I need to know that number.
I'll find out, it should be on there, Sean, so we'll make sure we add
I
it.
saw that 511. Oh,
515
yeah,
is
no,
what I've got.
It is, apologies.
It's on a weird page.
Yeah. I see it, thank you.
Okay, so now, moving along, we'll try to go through now. So we got sewer department and water department. So the next line is sewer operations. So this is the sewer departments all start with an 04. So all the departments we did beforehand are part of the general town operation, actually start with a 1. So it's 01 dash 4-digit number. The sewer department is 05-4326, and that's a recommended amount of $560,775. So you go through this is the operating department, so again, a lot of folks, and it makes sense, but I think the majority of the people in that department work in both water and sewer. So it'll say, okay, 50% of this person's salary is here in the sewer department, then when you get to the water department, you'll see the same person and the other 50% of the salary will be in there. So you got all of that, and then you got the, FICA and unemployment comp and something, thing, uniforms, safety boots, operating expenses. I'm trying to think if there's anything in here that. I mean, it's fairly straightforward. It's up about 2.3% from last year. I don't think we made any major changes. I don't think there was anything that we thought here that was controversial. But if you have any questions, I can try to answer them. I'll keep moving. You can always bring me back if you need to. The next section is the sewer capital project section, which is 4327. That's a recommended amount of $20,000. So what you'll see in here, there's 4 lines. The first 2 are things that are going on, and it's basically, gotta be careful, but I'm pretty sure that you'll see that, again, it's being split between water and sewer. So there's $10,000 for each of these projects. In the sewer department, when we get to water, you'll see that there's addition, the matching money in the water, right, Jeff?
For the paving.
For the paving. But not for the bridge crossing?
Correct.
Okay. And then the third line was the dump truck, which we did in '24, but it's still there because you want to be able to compare the last line. And then the last one is a sledge dumpster, which we were originally anticipating we would do in '25. It was in the early drafts of the budget, and Jeff found a way to get a hold of one before the end of the year. So we made it happen. He made it happen in '24, so we took the money out of the '25 budget.
So you weren't just being the bad guy?
No. We did what he told us to do. All right. So the next line is sewer surplus. So that's 4328, and that's a recommended amount of 91,937. So I'm going to try not to ramble too much. This is one that, so the water and the sewer department are called enterprise funds. So they're basically supposed to be run as standalone, separate businesses. You're not supposed to commingle their finances with the rest of the town. So one of the things we do is we say we the town, not me. One of the things the town does is the select board works with Jeff to set the rates so that you make sure that the revenue is more than the expenses, so that you have some surplus to put into capital savings, so you get some money to handle unexpected things or big projects coming once in a while. So what really happens is at the end of the year, you look at actual revenues minus actual expenses, and you make that transfer. At this point, we don't know what those actual things are. So for the past at least 2 years, we've said, well, we don't want to deal with this. We just put like a $1 placeholder in that line. What we found out this year in discussions is that causes a problem in state reports. They're like, things aren't adding up right. So they said, we know that it's not exactly the right number, it's gonna change, but you need to put that $91,937 in there, because that's the difference between the projected revenues and the projected expenses, and now everything will add up and balance. It's a little frustrating, because now what it's gonna do is it increases the number in the warrant article by $91,000. Doesn't spend any more money, but it makes the number look a whole lot less attractive. So I'll stand up at town meeting and try to explain a little bit about this. This will also be in the report that's in from the budget committee in there, but the warrant article doesn't look as good as it should, because it's got 91,000 in the sewer and 104,000 in the water, and the number is bigger than, but the spending didn't go up. I'm a little frustrated. It's going to be hard to explain to people, but that's the way it is. You didn't do anything wrong, it's just the accounts. So,
And in the past, it was being done behind the scenes.
in the past, it was being done basically by staff at the end of the year behind the scenes and everything was handled properly. But basically, the state said, but now the MS 737 you are submitting in March doesn't quite add up right. So we needed to fix that. And it made sense and we did that, but now I'm thinking about the fact that our warrant number went up from, I don't know, I have it in front of me, but I don't.
But it's offset by revenues.
But it's offset by revenues, but.
It would be the same exact number in the revenues.
Correct. But the revenues aren't on the warrant, you don't see those, so I have to make more of an effort to talk about them to make sure that the voters understand.
They are on the warrant, but they are in your MS 737.
Correct. Before I got on the budget committee, I don't think I had ever read that, so I don't think the average
Be careful.
town person does, but I hope they're wrong. I made mistakes. All right, moving on. Thank you for letting me vent a little bit. I'm sorry to do that to you. The next section is sewer debt principal payments, which is $47.11. That's $52,234. So again, this is the sewer. This is principal payments on long-term debt for sewer capital projects that have been done in the past that we have bonds out for. And the next line is the interest on those same long-term debt payments. So sewer debt interest, section 4721, is $21,920.
Jeff, do you know what you have left for years on those?
I wanna say, 27, one of them's paid off. Just looking at that the other day, but off the top of my head, I really don't know.
Let me look. Just
Yeah, that's Christine.
You trying to look
I
that
feel
up
like I
now?
should have the music playing in the background.
The Jeopardy music.
General, where is it? Debt.
You can get back.
Huh?
You can get back to me, or,
Oh, I can, yeah, I can.
We'll do it at a later.
You can move on and I'll find it and then I can tell
It
you.
might be in
It's
the,
right here.
it might be in the CIP spreadsheet.
Yeah, we also have a debt schedule
Okay.
we had to do that this year with our audit.
So before I move on, just so taking all of those sewer operations, sewer capital, and all of those things, you add them all together, and you get a total of $746,866. As someone pointed out, that's the exact same number that's the anticipated revenues for the sewer department. So it all balances. And now what?
I should have an answer. So Jeff, it's the chlor dechlor, right?
Yeah.
That goes till 2039. And then the NHDES one, is that one of them too?
Central Square and dewatering. So dewatering was
Oh,
there.
Central Square, sorry.
Yeah, Central Square.
Central Square is 2027.
That's the one I was thinking.
Yep.
Okay, so now we're gonna do basically the same thing for the water department. So these departments all start with 7. Water operations is 4331, and that's a recommended amount of $523,119. You'll see that this is certainly not exactly, but in many ways, it's kind of a mirror of the sewer operations. Same type of thing, salaries, people, associated costs, and then operating costs.
Excuse me.
So while you're looking through that, if you have a question, speak up, I'll keep moving. The next section is water capital. That's section 4332, and that's a recommended amount of $20,500. And that is, you can see the list of things here. The treatment plant paving was split between water and sewer, but there's a project here for basically SCADA is like a supervisory control system, so it's electronics to monitor the operation. If you really want detail, you can get it from Jeff, I'm not an electrical engineer. And then floor coating, and again, we budgeted and bought a truck in '24, that's in the budget, because we want to see what happened compared to previous years, but there's no money in '25 to buy yet another truck. And now surplus, so water surplus, which is 4333, is $104,884. That's the anticipated difference between revenues and expenses. And again, there's long-term debt on water projects, so there's a principal line, which is 4711, which is $55,173, and an interest line, which is section 4721, which is $6,414.
So the other one that is the water system bond is the DES one, right? So that one's done in 2031.
Okay, thank you. And the total for the water department sections is $710,090. So if you add water and sewer together, the total lines, departments, sections all add up to $1,456,956. And now you add general fund operations, debt service, and water and sewer enterprise funds. You get a total of $9,661,384. And that is the number that will appear in warrant article 9. We're not doing warrant articles yet, but that's the number that is reported out of the budget committee that will be discussed at the town meeting for the voters to approve.
348.
348.
You said 84.
Been a long night.
Okay, thank you. $9,661,348. Thank you for correcting me. I love the support. Thank you. All right, so that's the budget. Any questions from members of the audience? Okay, so now I'll try to stop rambling and go a little faster. We're going to cover revenues real quick, so you have a revenue report in front of you. The current estimated 2025 revenue are $4,100,264. You don't have the same report that you have in front of you now. I looked through this, I kind of tried to divide, to group things together. So let me ask, any questions on revenues? No. Okay. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to just do a quick pass through the proposed warrant article. I believe the warrant article is still amendable, still changeable. The select board still has not got a final approval, so this is not, it could change. I believe that,
Just the votes.
I think, but they could change if they wanted to, right? Or it's not?
No, we'd have to bring it back to you again.
Okay.
So
So-
they just have to vote on the.
So there's just voting to do. So that's why those things are highlighted here. Those will be updated, those will change. So the first 8 articles are gonna be handled on the Tuesday at the polling place. So I don't think I need to go through those, right? Okay, so we'll just start with Article 9. Article 9 is, I don't think I need to read this to you. I'll just say, so Article 9 is our typical budget article. As I mentioned before, it's $9,661,348, and it still needs to be voted on, but if it doesn't get recommended by a majority of both boards, that would be a surprise to me. Article, should I not have said that? Article 10 is for the contingency fund, so that's something I think we've done every year that I'm aware. I'm not forever in the town, but, so this is to establish a $25,000 contingency fund. Article 11 is for fireworks. In the past, that's been $20,000. It's proposed to be $25,000 this year.
I just have a comment on that.
Go ahead.
I don't think taxpayers should be paying that because only a limited number get to see the fireworks because of the way the areas are cordoned off so cars can't park anywhere near it. So the first people that get there can see the fireworks, but most of the town is not able to. But again, that's going to be voted on at town meeting, so it's just, that I don't believe it's a worthwhile expenditure for the
I hear you.
taxpayers.
Les wants to say something.
I don't disagree with you, Tom, and I think that's why we've always said we want it on a warrant
Right.
article,
Yep.
so that people can make that decision at town meeting, and we don't make it for them.
I was gonna say the same thing. I think that's why we don't just put it in the budget, line in the budget. We call it out to make sure that the voters approve, because there are some people that are enthusiastic supporters, or there are some people that are enthusiastic, this is not a good idea, so we
I'd
want,
support it if everyone could see them, but it's so limited that I don't think it's
okay.
fair.
And Mr. Chair, just pointing out that everything except for 2 articles does have the select board's vote on them now too. so.
Okay. So Article 13 is, again, I would call it a typical article. This is an article to make contributions to a variety of capital funds, capital reserve funds, capital
Article 12.
maintenance funds, expendable trust, different, I don't know what they are all. but-
Article 12.
What did I say?
13, but that's okay.
That's okay.
We know what you meant.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, but it's a public hearing, so I do need to be corrected. So Article 12 is for capital reserves. It's a total of $400,000 into 6 different funds.
Are you voting on these tonight?
We will
Yes.
vote on these after the public meeting, while we're still having a budget committee meeting, yes. Article 13 is basically asking for approval to put for a generator for the public safety building. As I understand it, it's $125,000. As I understand it, the expectation is that it will be paid for by a grant, that if the grant doesn't come through, the town won't do the project. But again, we have to approve spending the money, because state law says we have to do those appropriations, we have to spend the money, even if we're expecting to be
And is
reimbursed.
this something that was originally included in the project but had to be cut? No.
No,
Okay.
no, so there is a generator. It's the generator that was at the town office building. It's technically undersized. It operates the majority of the building. So this would be to really fully operate the building, put in a 3-phase generator. That's only a single-phase generator, but there's 3 phases in the building. And just like in years past, so the EMPG grant is typically a 50-50 match, but our kind of 50% contribution comes from building the building and the offset of what spaces the EOC and Emergency Management Director works out of. So it would be 100% funded. It will likely not be that much regardless, but it's just best to put the kind of max number in for now until somebody finally gets back to me with quotes on what it's gonna cost.
Okay, so that's Article 13. Article 14 is asking for authorization to raise and spend $254,416 to hire up to 4 new additional full-time permanent firefighters. And this is basically their salary and benefits for 6 months. So I am sure that there will be a lot of discussion and more explanation, but that's what the warrant article says at this point. That was Article 14. Article 15 is basically to establish a cemetery maintenance expendable trust fund and to allocate all future proceeds received from the sale of cemetery lots into this fund, and to appropriate $2,025, which is the amount that was received from the sale of 2 lots in 2024. And this amount of money is not from general taxation, but from the unassigned fund balance. So, and the cemetery trustees will be the agents to
So
expend.
how was this
the funds.
handled in the past? Covering those costs?
Do you want to handle it? Do you want to let Chuck handle it? You want-
So we haven't sold a lot for a long time, but according to statute and according to the cemetery bylaws, we had to accept, when we sold a lot, we have to take a check for perpetual care, and it has to, the trustees love me, it has to create a new fund at that time for the perpetual care, and then the rest of it goes into the general fund. And statute requires us to put it on the warrant article and we can ask the townspeople whether they wanna move it into a fund, which doesn't exist. So we had to create a new fund for the 6 cemeteries for general maintenance, so the lot fees can go into that. I'm actually meeting with the cemetery trustees in 2 weeks to ask them to change their bylaws, so we no longer have the perpetual care. So, and we just do a lot fee instead, or general maintenance instead, and then it can go into this fund we're creating, so. Before that, I have no idea how it's being handled, because we
So I
haven't
was gonna
sold
say
a
it's been
lot for
long.
a very long time.
Long time.
And we just sold 2, so. Did I miss anything?
No. That answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So that was Article 15. Article 16 is to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 for purchasing replacement firearms for the police department. So, I don't know all the details. I've heard that there's some concerns or issues with the existing weapons and that the police
Can-
have asked
the
and the
chief
select
address
board
that?
has.
Yeah, so, firearms are usually replaced every like 6 to 8 years. We're at the 7-year mark. This year we had 2 firearms. We've got 2 spares. One of them now is malfunctioning because one of our officers, it wasn't ejecting the round and putting the round back in. We fixed that, however, we're not relying on that not to happen again. So because the amount of years that they're normally replaced, seeing some issues with them, we've decided to go forward with replacing them now. This price also, we've got a couple of rifles that are from Vietnam, so this price is to also start slowly replacing some of those rifles as well.
It also includes optics, correct?
Yes, yes.
Which is.
It will have, which is a huge adding optics to them, which just about every police department now is switched to have optics on their guns.
And those are customized for the officer, is that correct?
Not necessarily customized for the officer. We tested out 4 different firearms. The officers who are our firearms instructors and have way more knowledge than me about firearms, tested them all out, then they narrowed them down to really 2, and then we've narrowed it down to 1. And from what they said, the one we've chosen was because this comes with a warranty with the sight, with optics, and the gun. Where the other ones, we were buying optics from a different company and a gun from a different company. They also liked how this one fired. So it's not specific per officer, but they are issued to each officer. And this price gives us, I think it was 2 spare guns, which we always want to have a spare gun, because one, if we were ever involved in a shooting, we will never ever get that gun back. And if something malfunctions, we have one to go to.
Okay. So that was Article 16. Article 17 is basically to establish a new capital reserve fund for energy projects and to support energy efficiency, renewable energy outreach initiatives, reducing energy costs. covering grant matches. In addition to establishing this new fund, to appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be placed in the fund, the sum of this $10,000 to come from the unassigned fund balance, and to name the select board as agents to expend.
Mr. Chair, since you saw this last, you saw the draft,
Mm-hmm.
the board added the wording from the unassigned fund balance. So they made that change at their last meeting.
So I noticed in 19 it said that that fund will be administered by the treasurer. Does this fund go to the treasurer or to the trustees of the trust funds? 17, do you know? Do we need to put it in here?
It would be the trustees of trust funds, but you don't need to put it in there. The treasurer, on Article 15, it has to, no, actually, which one?
Article 19, it says treasurer, I believe.
Yeah, that one's because we were amending and we're modifying a existing revolving fund,
Okay,
and we were told we had to put it in there.
okay. So I see that the select board has already voted 5-0 to recommend this. I had a conversation with the chair of the Energy Committee. He told me that he was strongly proposing this, and that he described to me that he thought that it was basically a fund that when we apply for grants, oftentimes they ask or require us to have matching funds. So this would be a pool of money to supply those matching funds so that we could get grants. I'm not a budget committee, just personally, I know during COVID, it was easy to get a grant. A lot of money going around. I believe for now and for the next 4 years, grants are gonna be a lot harder to get, certainly from the federal government. Not sure that I personally like this, but it is proposed and the voters will vote on it.
And I just add, the board felt that it would be up to the voters whether they supported it or not, so that's why they voted to recommend it, so.
Okay?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so can you just explain what is it that's saying, to increase energy efficiency? What does that mean? What does that mean? What are you talking about there?
So you're asking a wonderful question, but you're asking the wrong person. I think that you're gonna have to ask this question at the town meeting and let the chair of the Energy Committee answer that, because unless you wanna give us, no.
Okay.
The selectmen did discuss that a little bit though, right, about,
They discussed about renewable more, I think, when they talked about it. They haven't taken a stance that on renewable energy and where we go with that, and they wanted to be clear, I believe, in the meeting about that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Les?
I think we discussed the fact that some of us were uncomfortable with the fact that by doing this, it shows that we're supporting, but we don't know what we're supporting. And then we discussed the fact that we would be, as agents to expend, we will have the final say as to whether we move forward, so we leave it to the voters.
On any projects too, before we even apply for them, right?
Okay, so that was 17. So Article 18 is to raise and appropriate $16,700 for purchasing, installing, and maintaining 4 new trees in Central Square. So, I think that's fairly short and now the last one, what?
Well, for the public, it includes a Christmas tree, so we don't have to replant a Christmas tree every year. So it's 3 trees that we took down 6, we're putting 3 back, and it includes a Christmas tree.
So 3 deciduous trees and 1
Yeah.
evergreen? Okay. And Article 19 is a warrant article to modify the purpose of the existing transfer station revolving fund created in 2014 from, I guess its current purpose is promoting recycling through improved transfer station operations. And we're going to modify it to additionally include recycling through improvements and maintenance to transfer station operations, including equipment. and to add that all recycling revenue from cardboard and aluminum will be deposited into the fund, and the money in the fund shall be allowed to accumulate from year to year and shall not be considered part of the town's general fund balance. The town treasurer shall have custody of all monies in the fund and shall pay out the same only upon order of the governing body, and no further approval is required by the legislative body to expend. Such funds may be expended only for the purpose for which the fund was created. And the select board, you don't have a vote for them on this one?
No, we didn't have the wording finalized from the Department of Revenue in time, and their last week's meeting was postponed until Thursday. So general consensus, I believe, is that they are in favor of this article because they put it onto the warrant, less. You agree? Yeah.
Do you agree?
The wording is, this is the Department of Revenue again changing the wording. They told us to put governing body, which is, and the legislative body, when normally it's the select board that you put in there, but they finalized the wording with me on last week's select board meeting day,
So-
sorry.
Go ahead.
It's an existing revolving fund with $100 approximately in it. And what the board wanted to, there's gonna be some improvements that need to be done to the transfer station in the future, potentially compactors, they can cost a lot of money. And there might be other recycling initiatives that may wanna be looked at, so the board wanted to change the purpose of the existing to allow us to do improvements and maintenance, including equipment. And then taking, instead of raising any funds from taxation, taking the revenue from cardboard and from aluminum and putting that into the fund. And not taking all of recycling revenue, but starting with those two.
So I will again comment, as not as the chair, but as a member of the committee, that when we first saw this, I had asked a question, and I had said, well, when we agreed to do, when we approved doing the cardboard recycling, we said there was a fair amount of equipment purchase and cost going on, and that eventually we would earn enough to offset all of that cost between either revenues received from selling corrugate or expenses avoided by diverting things out of the municipal waste stream. So we don't have to truck it down and dump it and dispose of it that way. And I asked for an update on that, and the answer I got was, well, when the project was originally proposed, it was anticipated or estimated that it would be a 7-year payback. We did that 3 years ago. So 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So and then I looked through the detail on the revenue system, and basically for 2025, we're currently estimating that the aluminum recycling will be $3,000 and the corrugate recycling will be $7,500. So if we divert that out of what? It's in the revenue report.
Not complete the corrugate recycling.
Yeah?
It's a mix in the revenue. That's a mixture.
Yes. I don't have it in front of me. I could call it up on the computer, no? I'm willing to be corrected, but I was gonna say that I think it's
So-
$10,500 total for those two things I'm looking at.
It says recycling NRA, that's not just cardboard.
Okay,
Just so you know, that's a mixture.
gotcha, gotcha, did not understand that.
Yeah. Which I can tell you the line number, sorry.
It's line 3401-100,
100, yep.
and the aluminum was, I think, higher. 3290-425 is aluminum, that's 3,000.
Yep.
But you're telling me that the recycling NRA 3401-100 includes corrugate, but is not just corrugate, includes other things.
Yes.
Okay.
So I can tell you what the last 3 years were, my print didn't print, so I'm going back to the email. For 2024, it was 7,958.
But that's
That's
not
corrugate.
corrugate.
That's just corrugate, yeah,
Oh, was corrugate, okay.
yep. So this may not, does it have them all in there?
And this is estimating the entire 25. Now, again, we tend to, is 7,500,
Right,
so it's not that far off.
yeah, because if you look under 2024 actual, it's 9,073. So it's not, we did reduce it slightly. 2023, it was $6,266, and 2022, it was only $2,353. I think when we first enacted this, the cardboard prices, and Victor, you might know better, but cardboard prices dropped when we first started out.
Yes, they plummeted.
Yeah, and they started to come back up a little bit, but,
We also, NRA brought in 2 of the sites that they could broker with. So sometimes we have to wait a little bit longer to get the trucking to haul it, and sometimes in those contracts, there's no hauling fees.
right.
So it changes the price greatly.
I guess the point I was making, just for my personal point, is that when it says we're gonna divert revenue streams, I always wanna know, okay, what's the number? So I was gonna say, my understanding is it's roughly $10,000 a year.
I think that's fair.
So by diverting it out, it's not directly paying back for the,
By diverting it out, it doesn't now contribute to paying back for the cost of all the corrugating equipment, and it takes it out of general revenues, but if we're gonna make the investment in the transfer station for future equipment,
so it's a wash.
I mean, to me, it's a wash, whether you pay for it out of general funds, or you pay for it out of a trust fund. To me, it's like, you're paying it out of which your bank account, or which pocket, or which section of your wallet. You're spending money. Where it comes from is not as important. To me, it's the fact that the money's being spent.
And there was supposed to be state revenue coming in to support recycling and, reducing what's going to the landfills. But with the budget problems they're having, and I don't think the town has received any of that money that they talked about giving to the towns.
I don't know, but I know that the state is coming up on a really tight year, so I'm not expecting that they're not gonna give any money new that they have in the past. They're probably gonna give us less than what they've given us in the past, so we will see. So anyway, that's the proposed warrant article. 20 is any other business that can legally happen, so that's. So, we've gone over the budget, we've gone over the revenues, and we've gone over the proposed warrant article. Is there anything else that you guys have any questions or make any comments? Or are we ready to wrap this up? Okay, I think we are done with the public meeting. It's 8:04. Thank you all of the staff for coming in. I don't know, I thought we should have talked less and given you guys some more chances to talk.
No, I appreciate it.
All right, have a good night. So just so you guys, the members of the public, we still have some budget committee business to do. You are welcome to stay if you want to. You don't have to, but the public meeting is over.
Have to? Yes.
You don't have to. There's very little that you have to do.
Do you expect to wrap it up tonight, or?
Yes.
Good night, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
For your work.
See you guys, have a good night.
You too.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Have a good night.
Thank you.
So now, I think the next thing we need to do is now to do our votes on our recommendation. Is that your understanding?
It depends on if you want to start, but you can start at the budget if you want,
I will.
or wait down.
So I don't see a reason to go through. Now, I will point out that legally, we do still have the ability and the authority to make changes. think if we make reductions, we don't have to, but if we make any additions, we will have to have another public meeting tomorrow night. We have to present the budget in a public meeting with all of the money in it. So if we add something, we can do that, but we will back here tomorrow night to have the second session of the public meeting. I'll point that out. I don't have any proposed changes, but I want to make sure you guys know that if you want to make a change, we can consider it. So, I don't know, I guess I should make a motion. I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the 2025 budget as currently determined by the Budget Committee, which is a warrant article of $9,661,348.
Second.
Motion by Paul, seconded by Joe, to recommend approval of the current budget. I don't have any discussion. Does anyone want to make a comment or make a discussion? We have Sue still on the phone, so we have a Zoom meeting. We're going to have to do a roll call vote. Not hearing any more discussion, and we will call a roll call. I'll go first, and we'll go around the table clockwise. Paul says aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sue?
Okay, well, the only thing is I don't know that I can say aye if I didn't agree with one of the, because that would knock the balance off, if I didn't agree with the, one of the things that I voted no on, let's put it that way. So if I voted no, that would have changed the outcome for me, so how can I agree with the budget?
I'm not sure that I understand. You're saying that at least one of the proposed amendments to change the budget, you voted no, and
Right.
you voted in one direction, and the majority of the committee voted the other way, so you didn't get what you wanted.
Yeah.
So,
So if the budget, that would have changed the budget, so that means that the balance is beyond what because I voted no, it would have, reduced.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got what you're saying, so.
Yeah,
I don't think, in my opinion, you're not required to vote no. You're not voting that, you're not saying that you voted that you got everything you wanted. But
right.
and you can vote no if you want to, but if you vote yes, you're not saying I love every line. You're saying, on the whole, I'm recommending that the voters should approve this budget. If you vote no, you're saying I'm recommending that the voters should reject this budget. That's what we're voting on right now.
Okay, well then I'll go yes, I'll go yes then.
Okay.
Because everything else was fine, it's just that one thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay, so Les said aye and Joe said aye, so that's 6-0. So I don't need to do, well, we did a roll call, I don't need to do anything else. So we've made our recommendation for a 6-0 vote to recommend approval of the budget. So now we'll do revenues. I'll make a motion to approve the revenue budget, which currently has 2025 revenues of $4,100,264. Is that an okay motion?
Second.
So motion by Paul, seconded by Joe, to approve the revenue budget of $4,100,264. Again, I don't have any discussion about my motion, but if anyone has a question or a comment, the floor is open. Not hearing any, we will do a roll call vote again. Same thing, I'll go around the room clockwise. If you could actually say your name and your vote, I think that's the way I anticipate or would like to see roll call votes go. So Paul says aye.
Buzz Kenny, aye. Walter says aye.
Sue says aye.
Leslie says aye.
Joe says aye.
6-0, we're passed. Okay, now we need to go through the warrant. So we've already done Article 9, that was the budget. So now we've got Article 10, which is the contingency fund for $25,000. This one, to me, seems not very controversial. I'll wait a second to see if anyone wants to speak up and make a comment, but assuming there's not, we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote. So we're voting on our recommendation for the voters on Article 10. Paul votes yes.
You
need a motion.
Oh, you didn't make a motion, okay, thank you. I'll make a motion to recommend approval of warrant Article 10.
I'll second it.
Seconded, motion by Paul, seconded by Walter. Hearing no discussion, we'll do a roll call vote. Paul says aye.
Buzz says aye.
Walter says aye.
Sue says aye.
Leslie says aye.
Joe says aye.
6-0, that passes. Okay, Article 11, I'll make a motion to recommend the voters approve warrant Article 11, which is to raise and appropriate $25,000 for fireworks, patriotic recreation and special events, which will be used for fireworks.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion from Paul, seconded by Walter, for Article 11, which is $25,000 for fireworks. I'm thinking of what Tom said. I don't have a strong feeling. I'll say aye. Paul says aye.
Buzz says aye.
Walter says aye.
Sue says aye.
Les says aye.
Joe says aye.
6-0, we approve, we recommend approval of Article 11. Article 12, I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of Article 12, which is to raise and appropriate $400,000 to be added to 6 various capital reserve funds as listed in the warrant article.
Second.
Motion by Paul, seconded by Leslie, to recommend approval of Article 12. Not hearing any discussion, we'll have a roll call vote. Paul votes aye.
Buzz votes aye.
Walter votes aye.
Sue votes aye.
Les votes aye.
Joe votes aye.
6-0, we recommend approval of Article 12. Article 13, I'll make a motion to recommend to the voters that they approve Article 13, which is to raise and appropriate the sum of $125,000 for an emergency generator and corresponding components at the public safety building, with $125,000 to come from a grant. And so the appropriation is contingent upon receipt of the grant.
Seconded.
Motion by Paul, seconded by Joe. Roll call vote. Paul says aye.
Buzz says aye.
Walter says aye.
Sue says aye.
Les says aye.
Joe says aye.
6-0. Oops. Okay, Article 14. I'll make a motion that our committee recommends the voters approve Article 14, which is to raise and appropriate the sum of $250,416.
16.
Thank you. For the purpose of hiring up to 4 full-time firefighters. And so this is for salary and benefits for 6 months. I will comment before we do a roll call vote. Yeah, but we need a second, don't we?
I'll second it.
Thank you. So I have a motion by Paul, seconded by Joe. Since I made the motion, I get to talk first. I think that there's details here that I don't completely understand. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing Chief LaRoche and other people talk about it and explain what's going on exactly. I reserve the right, when I get that additional information, to vote as I see fit at the town meeting. But at this point, as far as recommending to the voters, I think I trust the chief and the town enough that I will vote yes for this. So that's what I'm thinking. Does anyone else want to make a comment?
I think just an important detail to add for the public record is that this is entirely offset by revenues from other towns.
Correct. Yes, if that wasn't in there, I'd be much less willing to vote yes.
I wouldn't be proposing it.
Thank you. I kind of, like I said, I trust the chief. I forgot you were in the room. I didn't realize you were listening to me talk. I trust the chief enough that if this were really crazy, he wouldn't propose it. So I think it probably makes sense. I just don't, even though he explained it to me once, I still don't feel like I completely understand all the details. So I reserve the right to reconsider, but at this point, I'm going to vote to recommend approval. And to your point, it is offset with revenues. All right. We ready for a roll call vote? Paul votes aye.
Les votes aye.
Walter votes aye.
Sue votes aye.
Les votes aye.
Joe votes aye.
6-0. Got the support you wanted. Okay, I'll make a motion to recommend the voters approve Article 15, which is to establish a new cemetery maintenance expendable trust fund and to allow all future proceeds from the sale of cemetery lots and interest gained to be used for the maintenance of cemeteries and to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,025 to put into the fund, that money coming from the unexpended fund balance.
Second.
Motion by Paul, seconded by Buzz, to recommend approval of Article 15. I don't think I have any comment. Anyone else have comment? Roll call vote. Paul says aye.
Les says aye.
Walter says aye.
Oh, Sue says aye, sorry.
Les says aye.
Joe says aye.
Okay, Article 15 is recommended for approval, 6-0. I'll make a motion to recommend the voters approve Article 16, which is to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 for the purpose of purchasing replacement firearms for the police department.
Seconded.
Motion by Paul, seconded by Joe, to recommend approval of Article 16. Oh, go ahead. I don't know, you want to make a comment? I was gonna comment that when I first thought about this, I'm like, I'm not sure I like it, but the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, if the weapons are getting old and they're not reliable, we could have a horrible situation with the police. It's probably worth $25,000, so I'm gonna vote yes.
I would say my only comment on this is I feel like this should be a standard part of the operating budget. I know that back and forth over the years, we've talked about large dollar items going in the operating budget, out of the operating budget. But just my comment to the budget committee is you can't really have a police department in 2025 without firearms. It's a required piece of equipment for them. So I certainly would support this, regardless of whether or not it's on the warrant.
Well, it's interesting because in past years, especially when we had Charlie amongst us, we would get the budget and then Charlie would be like, this is a big item, let's not bury it in the budget, let's make it a warrant article.
Right.
But we didn't do that this year. It was never in the budget and we found out about it when we first got to look at the warrant. So I'm
It's gone back
not
and
telling you
forth
you're
over the
wrong,
years.
but I'm telling you, I don't feel like we did anything wrong here.
No, agreed.
Okay. Ready for roll call?
No, can I just ask?
Yes, go ahead, Sue, go ahead.
Yeah, no, but why wasn't it put in the budget? Why wouldn't it have been put under the police budget? That's a standard thing, item, that you would have to have purchasing your firearms
I don't-
every so often.
I don't know, we could ask Les from the select board, but she just said what I was thinking. One of two things happened. Either the Chief Bean said, I want it to be visible so the voters know, or it got thought about after early September when the budget was submitted. So, I mean, I don't know when it came up. I don't know when it was first proposed.
It wasn't proposed until the warrant article,
Yeah,
so
that-
it may have been something that they were considering after the budget was presented, because we did warrant articles November and December, so.
And I'm not sure he had the pricing on it.
Or no,
prior to,
December,
So he was waiting.
Yeah. And I
So-
think he thought it was a substantial line item, so that's why he may have done it as a warrant article as well, so.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that the committee would like to make sure that Christina as the administrator and Les as our select board rep know that for things like this that are not nice to have, but pretty much must have,
Mhm.
in the future, we think they probably belong in the budget.
I wrote a note down already.
I think so too.
Right? That's just a comment that you could share with the rest of the board, we'd appreciate it. Does that work for you? Okay, roll call vote on Article 16. Paul says aye.
Les says aye.
Walter says aye.
Yeah, Sue says aye.
Les says aye.
Joe says aye.
Okay, 6-0, we recommended Article 16. Article 17, make a motion to recommend that the voters approve Article 17, which is to establish an energy projects capital reserve fund for the purpose of funding energy efficiency and renewable energy projects, outreach initiatives related to increasing energy efficiency and/or reducing energy costs, and for covering grant matches related to increasing energy efficiency. And to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be placed in this fund. The sum to come from unassigned fund balance the select board or agents to expend.
Second?
Motion by Paul, seconded by Les, to recommend approval of Article 17. So even though I made the motion to recommend approval, I think I'm gonna vote no on this one. This is not really well defined, and I'm not sure that I like it. So
So can I
it
comment?
doesn't stop the town from spending money on this thing, it just doesn't create a fund to do that. Go ahead, please.
I would comment, just from the select board's perspective, when we discussed this, we wanted to be sure that we weren't telling the voters that we would approve anything that came up from an energy committee's ideas or things that they thought should be done, unless we felt that's what the town wanted done. But the other piece of this is, and we saw this with the EDC, is we charge these people with doing great work as volunteers for us, but then we don't give them any funds so that if an opportunity comes up, that they can act on it. So we felt that it's not really fair to, on one side, say, yes, we support the committee, but no, we're not gonna support you with any money. So we agreed that if something good should come up and the board felt that that's what the town wanted, then we would vote to go forward with it. But that would give us the ability to do so with some money in there.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to comment?
I'll just say, as a member of the Energy Committee, I didn't have any role in drafting this, but I don't think that it's intended to be an endorsement for anything. It's just money there. This grew out of the effort to put solar panels on the public safety building. The particular grant that we applied for had a significant match. And we just thought that, at that time, politics hadn't changed in Washington, but we just thought that, we're gonna be looking for other grants. There's the possibility of, we're looking into expanding the solar field down by the wastewater treatment plant.
Mm-hmm.
And that this would just make things easier on the voters. But there's no, at least from my perspective as a member of the Energy Committee, that is not intended to be an endorsement for any particular project.
Okay. I guess part of the, I hear you saying, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, but to me, if it says the select board recommended 5-0 and the budget committee recommends 6-0, it should be not much question, we want the voters to approve it. I kind of want at least one no vote in there to let them know, hey, let's talk about this, let's get some more info. Maybe, I said the same thing about the fire and I didn't give the know it, but it's kind of the same type of thing. Maybe it's because no offense, Buzz, but I trust the fire department more than I trust the energy.
None taken. So do I.
That's me. So I'm not planning to stand up and make a big stink about this and demand that everyone vote no and the town turn it down, but I kind of want to make sure they know that there's some question here. I'm not clear that what the benefit is.
I think an important point though,
Please,
is
go
it's
ahead.
not so much, like, the example you just provided was the Energy Committee versus, fire
Yeah,
department.
that's not good.
It's actually the select board, right, who has the authority to expend these funds should the warrant article pass. So at least in my mind, it's a group of elected officials by the constituents who are voting on the warrant.
So that
So-
you might, in essence, you might be saying more that you trust that the select board will make the right decision when the time comes, and not that the energy committee might propose something that you wouldn't like.
Exactly. That's a more succinct way of
So, so you're both saying you think that it would be much better to have a 6-0
I don't think it
recommendation than
matters.
a
No.
5-1?
I don't think it matters, I think you vote your conscience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I completely agree
I
with
mean,
that
I-
point. I was just disagreeing with you.
Well, that's fine. To be honest, I don't really want to talk you guys. Sue, did you want to say something before I go?
Yeah, no, it's just that right from the start, I'll be voting no as well. I mean, just because I do have a couple of questions on that, and there really isn't a full answer on that. It doesn't sound right to me for some reason. There's something missing in the way I'm perceiving this. So I'm really going to be voting no on it too. That's exactly why I
Okay.
asked the question to begin with.
All right.
What does that mean?
Thank you for that comment. So part of the thing is I don't really want a majority no vote. So if 3 of you all say you're going to vote no, I'm going to switch back to yes, because I don't want it to be a majority no, but I didn't want it to be a unanimous yes.
Stop talking yourself in circles.
Shut up and vote?
Vote your conscience.
Please be quiet and vote.
I just will add that the language is boiler from, we were given it from other towns, but also from the Department of Revenue, so,
Okay.
In
Just
the
so you
end,
know.
the voters really don't care. They're gonna vote what they think is appropriate.
I wanted at least one no vote. Sue, since you're saying no, are you going to be upset if I switch?
No, I won't be upset if you switch. I just think that that's kind of a crazy reason to switch.
You're just now figuring out that I'm crazy?
Yeah. Well, not really, but I knew before, but I got it confirmed.
This gets better and better.
almost spit my coffee out.
All right, let's call a roll. I thank you for that direction. Let's call a roll call. No, I'm sorry, I made myself go first. I will vote no. Paul said no.
That says aye.
Walt says aye.
Sue?
Oh, sorry, Sue says no.
Les says aye.
Joe says aye.
Okay, recommendation passes 4-2. Thank you. I lost track of where we are. That was 17. 18, I make a motion to recommend to the voters that they approve Article 18, which is to raise and appropriate the sum of $16,700 for the purpose of purchasing and installing and maintaining 4 new trees in Central Square, including a Christmas tree.
Second.
Motion by Paul, seconded by Les, to recommend approval of Article 18. Any comments?
I just have a question. Are these 4 trees just like in the center right there? You're gonna be able to fit 4 trees right there? In the very center of the square? Is that
No,
where you're thinking of putting them, or along the sides, or where?
there were 6 cut down between the central square and the Beano property and the church driveway, and I think the 6th one was closer to, what are they called now? The pizza.
Oh, you're talking,
Yeah.
Lynn Cross.
Lynn
Lynn
Cross,
Cross.
thank you, Lynn Cross. I'm like,
no, not Pat's Pizza.
so there were 6 trees along that line, and they were taken down because of the ash borer, and so we want to put 3 along that line and spread them out, and then the 4th is the Christmas tree, which would be down in the same location roughly that the current Christmas tree is.
Right, okay, all right, yep.
Okay, not hearing any more conversation, we'll do a roll call vote. Paul says aye.
Les says aye.
Walt says aye.
Sue says aye.
Les says aye.
Joe says aye.
6-0, we recommend approval of Article 18. One more to go. Article 19, I make a motion that we recommend to the voters approval of Article 19, which is to modify the existing transfer station revolving fund.
How about just Article 19?
I'll just say Article 19, I don't need to read the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any comments?
Second.
Oh, yeah, I need a second. Joe?
Yep.
Motion by Paul, seconded by Joe. Thank you for Les for reminding. Not hearing any comments, we'll do a roll call.
Wait, there was
Yep,
something.
that's why
I did.
Go ahead.
I did have a question, because I just wanted to be really clear what I was hearing. So when you were talking about revenues from the cardboard and aluminum, right?
Yep.
I wasn't sure how much the revenue from the aluminum was. I kind of missed that one. But so the total, let's say it comes to $10,000. So $10,000 would be deposited into the fund, and then it can accumulate each year. And that's just like an emergency fund? If the operation, the transfer station needs repair, what is it for? Just if it needs repairs or things like that, or what are we talking?
I mean, Chuck's not here, I don't know, do you wanna try to answer, or do you want me to give it a shot?
Well, this is the select board's warrant article, well, one of the select board member brought it through. It's improvements and maintenance both, and it's for the transfer station and their equipment. So it is,
So I would say it's either or. It could be in an emergency situation if something had to
Or
be
it could be
replaced,
planned.
or it can be used as a capital reserve fund that you're building it up, and if we need to make a purchase, we'd be able to do so.
we didn't, the board, sorry Sue, the board didn't want to create another fund. This was an existing fund that had, like I said, about $100 maybe roughly in it. So the thought was to, instead of leave that money just sitting there, was to change the purpose of that fund and to be able to put some, and start putting money into that fund as well, so.
Okay, but it'll accumulate and then sit in a fund anyway if it's not used, correct? Because it just
Yes.
accumulates each year.
Yes,
And so it would be an emergency, or if they need, upkeep, repairs, or what have you. So none of you're saying none of that money, the revenues, goes on the revenues list that we have been counting for the last couple of years. It's not gonna go on there anymore as revenues received.
that approximate approximately $10,000, correct?
The revenues from
Okay.
those two things,
Yeah.
but there's other revenues
There's
that
other
will
revenue.
continue to
Yeah.
go.
This is, in my mind, this is pretty similar to in years past, I believe it was police detail funds.
Yes.
We used to park a portion of those in a capital reserve fund to replace police cruisers. I think this is a similar mindset where the day we have to replace a compactor, the day we might have to replace the baler for the cardboard, some of those large dollar equipment items at the transfer station, I think that's probably the most likely use of this fund, or at least that was my impression.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we have a compactor that we can probably get through one more year. And that's gonna be a big ticket item if we can't get it through one more year. Obviously, this fund won't have enough to replace the compactor in 2 years, but,
Okay, now I get it, yep.
So the one other thing I would say, Sue, is, I mean, when we did the transfer station section, when Chuck, we went over that budget with Chuck, he also talked about that he's got a vision that he'd like to create more recycling streams and divert more things out of waste and into recycling. So in addition to being, let's replace the compactor, it potentially could be used to, let's buy this new piece of equipment to allow us to start recycling this other type of stuff.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, and as long as it's all used for the transfer station purposes, there's no problem. I just wanted to make sure that's what it was.
that's my understanding, is yes, it'll be there, and that, again, the select board, any proposal to spend the money will go to the select board, and the select board has to approve it. It's not just that the department head can spend the money, the department head will propose spending money, and the select board will decide whether or not to do it.
Okay, yeah.
Does that answer? Any other questions?
Yes.
Okay, roll call. Paul says aye.
Buzz says aye.
Walt says aye.
Yeah, Sue says aye.
Plus, as I,
Joe says aye.
So Article 19 recommendation passes 6-0. Minutes, next item, minutes, review minutes of our most recent meeting, which was January 28th. Got anything?
Yeah.
Thought you might.
do you want to make a motion?
Do I want to make a motion? Go ahead, to what?
Approve and then second, make minutes, or is that how that
We can do it that way. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 28th meeting. and then they'll get amended, and then we'll vote to
Yeah.
approve them as amended, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Second.
So I got a motion from Paul, seconded by Les, to approve the minutes, and now we will discuss, and we'll let Buzz go first.
On page 3, in the first paragraph, halfway down, the line begins with the word taxes, and then it says noting Bristol BP LLC. I would strike our payment revenues based on and put in represents payments to the town under. And then, I don't know, it just says the solar agreement, I'm assuming that's the Barrington Power agreement. I don't know if just saying the solar agreement is enough for people that don't. Is this intended to be the wastewater contract?
Yes,
Yeah,
yep.
so you should say the Barrington Power
They're different
agreement.
name now.
I don't know what the name is, but I mean, it's not the solar agreement. Anyway, in review of draft warrant articles, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down, it begins dependent, it should be depending, ing. Article, the paragraph that begins Article 11, in the third line, it says fireworks committee, which funds the town. The fireworks committee doesn't fund it, so I think it should say is responsible for the town's 4th of July fireworks celebration. In the next paragraph, Article 12, in the third line, Ms. Goodwin added that you should strike the word "the."
Did we get that?
And just a few more.
Wait a minute, can I ask you something? What did you just say on Miss Goodwin added?
Oh, it's just, Miss Goodwin, it currently says Miss Goodwin added that the many of the funds. You just strike the word "the" before the word "many." It's just
Okay.
grammar.
Many of the fund amounts, okay, yes, okay, thank you.
On the next page, in the second paragraph, I gotta read my own. You've got a number of places here, where just towards the end, Ms. Goodwin discussed, and then it's stated. I think starting in the line that begins timely manner, you'll see it goes preferable care, period. You should insert then,
She stated?
yeah, she stated, Ms. Goodwin stated. And then the same thing in the next line, emergency calls have increased, period, Ms. Goodwin stated, and Ms. Goodwin stated, something like that. And then I missed one, in the line that begins Goodwin, discussed the increased emergency calls, some of the calls are not answered, and then it says, or in a timely manner. I think you should add, after the word or answered in a timely manner, and not answered or.
I don't think I said they were unanswered, because I don't think they're,
Yeah, I wondered about that too, but,
Yep, so let's edit that.
yeah.
yeah, all right, then just say not answered in a timely manner. I don't even know if that's correct.
Meaning sometimes they had
Have you
several
seen this? Do
calls
you
and
want-
some of them were not being able to be answered.
How about just, Ms. Goodwin stated, there was an increase in emergency calls, and some of the calls are taking a longer response due to the
Yeah,
distance
that's-
or proverbial
Yeah,
care.
that's good.
Does that sound?
Yep,
That sounds better.
yes. Just nickel and dime in the paragraph that begins Article 17,
Okay.
in the third line, there should be a slash in between the and the or.
True.
And Article 18, again, I gotta read my, well, in the first line, it says money to purchase, again, there's an extra "the" in there that should be
Which, I'm
stricken.
sorry, Buzz, where are you?
Article 18.
Article,
Thank
the
you.
line that begins Article 18
Yep, got
was
it.
noted as the article to raise appropriate money to strike the word "the." And then in the last line of that, after it budgeted for 3 parentheses,
Yeah.
comma, and then insert she will update the figure.
Okay.
And that's it.
Did anyone else have any comments on the minutes? Not hearing any, let's go ahead and approve the minutes as amended. We'll do a roll call vote with Sue on the computer. Paul says aye.
Says aye.
Walt says aye.
Sue says aye.
Us says aye.
Joe says aye.
6-0, the minutes are approved. Correspondence? Anyone else have any correspondence they want to talk about? I just want to make the committee aware that, as in all years, the budget committee, like all other committees and departments, is asked to write a report to go into the town report that's distributed at the town meeting. Deb and Shannon, who are responsible for that, have pointed out to me that I haven't submitted that yet. So I've got it about halfway written, and I will send it in. I was hoping to do it today, but it won't happen until tomorrow, which they've told me is their deadline. The big thing that I'm focusing on is again, that in addition to looking at the warrant article number, we need to look at revenues, because 9,600,000 is a lot more than 9,100,000 last year, but part of that is just because we had to increase the sewer and the water. That $200,000 just sticks in my craw. I think it's gonna get people excited, so I wanna preemptively try to explain to them what's going on. That's, other than that, and then normal, thank all of you for all of your service, and thank the folks who are not gonna be on the committee next year for all of their service, including Janet.
Yes.
Okay?
Sounds good.
All right, that's my correspondence. I don't think there's anything else I've corresponded on. And I don't think anyone else has. Comments? Anything going on in the select board we know about? We need to know
I
about?
don't think there's any more than what we've discussed tonight.
Okay, that's what I thought you would say. Joe, anything?
Nope.
Buzz? Walter? Sue?
No.
So the one comment I will make, just to let you guys know, is so we have 3 positions on the election ballot coming up in March, and we have 3 candidates. So we should have a full 7-member board. I'm not doing it now. I want to give you a heads up that if possible, take a look at your calendar and come to the meeting, because rather than me just picking, I want to do what we did this year, which is have like an organizational meeting, probably like in late April. We'll elect a new chair, we'll elect a vice chair, we'll review our bylaws, change anything people want to be done. Rather than me just picking a date, if we could get together at the end of town meeting and talk about, do we want to do it on a Tuesday night, do we want to do it on a Wednesday morning? I mean, I know you don't want to do that. So we do it at night sometime. But I'd like your input rather than me just not randomly, just me arbitrarily picking a date.
Do we want to drop by the homestead after the town meeting?
I love that idea. Okay, so that's the only thing I wanted to say is, I'm looking for your input on a date for an organizational meeting. I think that's it. Christina, staff comments, anything? Tom, public, anything you wanted to
I
say
just
before we?
want to commend all of you. You're doing a great job making it understandable to everyone, whether they're familiar with budgets or not. And it's such a contrast from the school board budget committee, which did nothing this year. But you guys really seem to be on top of it, and you're making it clear to everyone. I just want to commend you. You're doing a wonderful job.
Did you want to say
Paul, I
something?
think you've done a wonderful job.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it's good. can't pull my hair out because I don't have any pull.
No, you just made me pull, no, I'm kidding.
All right, I think we're done. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Seconded. I don't need to do a roll call for this, do I? All in favor, aye? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. See you hopefully on Saturday in March.
Computer